elderly or high risk. If you have a cough, fever, or shortness of breath, stay home from work or school. Do not go to the ER or doctor's office without
60938 or 888-949-5387. San Juan Regional Medical Center, caring for the Four Corners since 1910. Minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Thursday morning, April 30th. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Micklin. Thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, 103.3 FM over the air in Durango, Colorado, and of course, streaming everywhere from our website, ksje.com. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program live on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel. We are glad that you are with us this morning because we're going to be talking with my guest. Bart Wilsey is here from the Farmington Museum, and I've asked him the question, what was Farmington and San Juan County like during the last pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic in the years 1918 and 1919? So Bart has done a little bit of research, and we'll be here to tell us a little bit about the conditions here in Farmington and San Juan County. We've got some great photos to share with you on our visual radio platforms from the Farmington Museum archives, so join us for that. It's going to be a fun program in the next few moments right here on KSJE. At 9 a.m., of course, it's our local coronavirus program. Megan Cullip will be joining me here in Studio A. Today at 9 a.m., we're streaming the program live on YouTube and Facebook. We'll be talking with a couple of doctors from San Juan Regional Medical Center about the caseloads there, some new information about testing, and much, much more. It's coming up live at 9 a.m. You can hear it again at 5:06 this afternoon on the radio, again 90.9, 103.3 FM, or on our website at ksje.com. And on the radio side of things at 9 this morning, Mick Hess is going to take us roving with the arts. Today, Mick is playing some Gershwin overtures on the show today, so you can listen to that at 9:06 on KSJE. We invite you also to connect with us on Twitter and Instagram, in addition to Facebook and YouTube. And let's talk about the weather. It's going to be a warm one for the next couple of days, the warmest yet so far this year. 87, partly sunny skies today in Farmington, the low tonight 49. More sunshine tomorrow with a high again of 87 degrees. Bit cooler for the weekend, but highs still unseasonably warm with a high of 83 on Saturday, 84 on Sunday, and 83 on Monday, and overnight lows in the 40s. Well, let me turn to my guest who is here with me this morning. The one and only Bart Wilsey is here from the Farmington Museum. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
With this assignment that I gave you, I mean, this is, I think, interesting, and I think probably you do too.
Well, it is, yeah.
You showed up at least, so, and you're entertaining me, so yeah.
Sure, entertain Scott.
Right. But, I mean, Farmington and San Juan County during this other pandemic, and it was a pandemic, the Spanish flu,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of folks got sick, a lot of folks died, and we'll talk about that in just a moment.
Right.
But this is 1918, 1919.
Yep.
And that's when it got here.
Right.
In the northwest corner of New Mexico. And so at that time, we should talk a little bit about some of the things that were going on. As I mentioned, we had maybe, just a few years after statehood.
Well, yeah, it was only 6-7 years after statehood. So, it was really, really early here in Farmington's history. So, it was a very small place.
Right, exactly. And so we had, statehood was 1912. Mm-hmm. Some of the other things we were talking about, there was a giant flood, a big flood in 1911,
right,
which caused a lot of damage, right, and some deaths.
Absolutely, there were a couple of deaths from that. Not many, thankfully.
Right.
But there was also 2 fires in that decade too. One in 1910 and one in 1914. Both what we call downtown.
Right.
So they really changed the architecture and the scene downtown.
Because those were blocks of buildings that were destroyed in those 2 fires. Both of them, right? Lots of damage.
Yep,
so.
Lots of damage. One on the Three Rivers Brewery side, and then one on the north side of Main Street. So
right.
yeah, it really changed the landscape down there.
And that's why we don't have a lot of those old, maybe wooden buildings,
Really
because they
historic-
burned down and they rebuilt with brick.
Exactly.
They didn't want that to happen again,
Right.
or at least if not as easily,
Not
perhaps,
as easily.
right?
Yeah.
So interesting. So we have a picture of downtown Farmington from about this time, I think, right?
Yep.
And if we show
That's
it, this is Main Street, right around Wall, I guess, right? Would be the street
this
coming
would
in, because
be-
you can see
yes,
the
this would
corner
be-
of what is now Artifacts,
Right. Right.
the lumber yard
Looking-
on the far right-hand side.
Looking west. Yep. Lumber yard on the right-hand side.
Kind of the cornice on the top
Right.
thing there.
Matches
wall.
that.
Yeah.
And of course, the city hall at that time was right across the street. That's the brick building on the left-hand side.
We see
which is
right.
City Hall.
Most of the side of that. And right now, this is where the new yogurt ice cream place is, kind of a gas station.
Yes, which
Right.
was for sale again.
Okay. So it's a closed yogurt store, but whatever. But
Right.
it's there. But it's that gas station right at
Right.
kind of the top of where Main and Wall Street
Exactly.
come into
right
play there on the south
near
side of Main Street.
Near TJ's Diner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so looking down, we're looking west, as you said. But anyway, you can kind of see the cars, which are awesome. They look really cool.
Right, right.
And so,
But it was a very, small town. I mean, that was it for commerce right there.
you can see it. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I meant to look up the census figures about population in this era, and I don't recall, but I imagine it was what?
It was about 700 from what I understand. So
Okay.
Between 700 and 800 people.
So that would be comparing it to modern day Silverton,
Right.
maybe. And I think
Maybe.
even that's small. Maybe,
Maybe.
that's San Juan County,
Yeah, maybe.
Colorado, is 700 people. But that size.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very small.
And so at this time, too, again, Aztec is at least as big, if not a little bit bigger, than
Than
Farmington
Farmington.
at this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Absolutely,
it
yeah.
was the county seat.
County seat.
We'd gotten that resolved,
Right.
that whole incident. And then it was really kind of the place. And the train had...
Well, the train came through there, and they had a depot, so they did a lot of business through Aztec, too. So.
Right. And train came to Aztec first, right? And then
Right.
there was a little delay
Right.
before it was extended to Farmington,
Right.
wasn't there?
Right.
And that was around 1905.
1905.
So
Yeah.
again, a
Or
few
not-
years before this.
Yeah, 1905. Yeah.
And Farmington was founded as a city, incorporated in 1902, we thought. 1901, 02?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
So again, not too...
Close.
Yeah. So here we are in 1919.
Right.
And Spanish flu is coming along. And again, that's kind of a misnomer because it really is the Kansas flu.
Wasn't really Spanish, yeah. Right. But, during World War I, Spain was neutral, so they actually reported a lot on the flu, and that's why people kind of
called it Spanish flu.
Spanish flu.
Even though it was
Not
all over
Spain
the place.
It was worldwide.
And a lot of things that folks thought helped it to spread was the soldiers coming back from
Right.
the war, right?
Right.
From World
Right.
War I in
Correct.
Europe.
Yep.
And so they brought it probably
Right.
back to this country.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so like we're seeing now, it was spreading and it got into even remote places like Farmington, New
Farmington,
Mexico and
yep.
San Juan County, which, we didn't have a lot of travelers like we do today.
Right.
But we still had a
Exactly.
lot of patients, didn't we?
Well, once it's in a community, as we know, it spreads.
Right.
So yeah, it was the same back then as it is now.
And there were some kind of stay-at-home orders like we're seeing today.
There
and
were,
we saw
yep.
I think we've seen some posts from the newspapers of the day talking
Right.
a little bit about these things, right?
And kind of a shout out to Hannah Grover at the Daily Times
Yes.
for the piece that she did because there were orders to stay home and not congregate.
Right.
So, which is hard to do. I mean, we're
Well,
social
yeah.
creatures.
There's no Amazon
Right.
in 1918, so how are you going to shop, right?
Exactly. You had to go out for some stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
but that was the era. So I want to show some of the other pictures because I think they're just fascinating.
Oh,
of what
absolutely.
you brought,
Absolutely.
of
You
what
bet.
we're talking
Yep.
about in this era. And again, thanks
Right.
to the museum and to you for making these available. But we should give credit to the museum archives.
Yep.
So this is another great shot of a leafy street.
Very leafy.
This is Orchard Avenue, right?
This is Orchard Avenue. Yep.
And we're looking south towards Main Street.
Looking south toward Main Street, you can see the building which is three rivers at the end of that right there. So,
Right.
very cool. It's almost like we're standing right in front of the E3 Children's Museum.
So that's cross street right there would be La Plata Street.
Right.
And then the other one major street there is Orchard. But yeah, there's a lot of trees.
Lot of trees at that time. You know, there are still a few big ones down there, but it's changed quite a bit.
Definitely. But another great shot. And I know there's a ditch that runs through there that probably helps those trees, and they were probably there at that time. It's one of those early things, right?
Probably.
Ditches were a big part of this area in those days.
Well, they were. You know, they dug those almost as early as people arrived here, you know, when they opened it up for settlement and, started irrigating off of those.
Right.
And
growing
that's
things.
what
Farmingtown
grew out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was part of that. But there's another shot. And then this picture now is...
This picture is the home of Dr. and Mrs. Salmons. He was an early prominent physician here in Farmington. He did have a clinic or an office thing in his house that he worked out of too, but he also worked at the hospital. His wife was Harriet Salmons, which was one of the...
She has a lot of stories.
Yes, a lot of stories. She was the first bank president...
in Mexico,
one of the
in
first,
the state, right?
One of the first in the nation.
Okay.
Yeah.
First national bank.
Yep. She saw that bank through the Depression in the 30s, and
right.
It was very well known.
But Dr. Salmons would have been maybe seeing some of these
He would
patients.
have been seeing and treating some of these patients that had
Spanish flu.
Spanish flu.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
And again, I didn't do my homework, Bart Wilsey, but maybe you did for me, about the numbers of patients or victims that we saw here during that time. But it was a lot of people were getting sick and dying from this all over the world.
Right. Well, kind of another shout out to Hannah in the article that she wrote. They didn't track the numbers very well. And so we know how many people died, like, say, right out of Farmington proper. There were 11.
Okay.
But, she also said there was a death up in La Plata that wasn't counted. The deaths over in Shiprock weren't counted. So, the record or recording of that event was not very good. So there were many more people that died than was reported at that time.
I understand.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So.
But it was still more than usual.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It certainly got folks' attention, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it wasn't your usual.
In fact, they said that more people passed away, in the Shiprock area than in Farmington. So, yeah, it was definitely an event.
Right. And so there were and all those things that go along with it, right? Where do you put these bodies, and what do you do, and how do you keep everyone else safe?
In Mary Lou's book, Homesteads to Boomtown, she talks about, people looking in on each other, and like one family would visit their neighbors, and all of the people in the house would be down sick. So,
right.
People were looking out for each other.
Nice. But
yeah.
I'm not surprised, knowing the community the way it is. People look out for each other here.
And one person gets it, and it's
the concept of social distancing maybe wasn't quite as evolved in 1918.
Well, and it probably wasn't as understood. Yeah, absolutely.
Or how viruses work and all that stuff. I mean, I would probably agree with you there. So interesting. Another picture that I found that I wanted to share too, because it's something somewhat relative, right? This was the school.
It was. Yep.
And not just the high school or middle school. This was the
school. All schools.
All grades.
Yes.
The school, and this was again on Wall Street.
Yep.
And on the hill, it's kind of behind, I would think, maybe where Swinburne was.
Right.
In that plot of land, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Long gone. This was maybe right before it got torn down. You can kind of see it's probably been abandoned or not being used as a school anymore when this picture was taken.
I think it was torn down in the early 80s.
Right.
When that.
But that's what it looked like.
Yeah, I mean.
And it had been added onto several times, I think, too, with this picture.
Significant number of kids grew up, went to school went to school.
I love
in
the
that.
stories that I see sometimes
yeah.
on the old Facebook groups about memories from this school, and of course,
I used to talk to Bob Culpepper about that a lot.
Right.
He had a ton of stories.
there was something about during a fire drill, if you were on the second floor, there
Right.
was a unique way to get out of the building.
You had to go out one of the windows, and I don't remember if it was like a slide or something that they made.
Pole, or I don't know what they were, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was creative.
Yeah, I would think so. So anyway, so this was the school in
Right.
those days,
In
right,
those
where all the
days, yep.
grades went, and there weren't very, as you mentioned, only 700 people in the city, the town,
right.
So their graduating class was pretty small.
Pretty small.
Yeah,
And
here they are.
And those are the kids that probably, went to school. There were probably
Right.
other ones that were working on the farm and maybe didn't get all the way through school at
Right.
that time. So, yeah.
But
these
this was
were
the
probably
class
the
of,
ones-
I think 1917, if you read it
that's
on their hats.
1917, yep.
Nine students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So there you go.
yep.
But that was the class from that time.
Yep.
So interesting, right? And so as we move on a little bit, there's the train station in Farmington, right?
Train station, yep. The train arrived in Farmington October 1905. And, it really provided a way to both get goods in here and produce and livestock out of here.
Right.
So, yeah, it became a real hub of activity. And for people that don't know where this was located, if you go down to Maine and Barron, if you go south on Barron from Maine, when Barron takes this little jog to the right, if you kept going straight, you would run right into that depot.
That's where it was.
That's where it
right
was.
There.
Yep.
Gotcha. So you'd cross Broadway, you'd cross Animas,
Right.
and then right after that was probably
Right.
around where the tracks came and the station was.
Absolutely. It kind of paralleled San Juan Boulevard coming down.
Right.
And then got into the downtown area there.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And that would make sense, of course, because we know a lot of the hotels were then located, the Allen Hotel on Allen Avenue,
Right.
now the name escapes me there on Main Street, but the big hotel that was there at Main and...
Oh, the Avery.
The Avery, thank
Yep.
you. Yep, on Main and
Yep.
Barron almost, right?
Right.
So there's
Yep.
that one too. So
Yeah.
anyway, but there you go. And again, this train went north, for folks who don't know, right? This linked us to Durango, and then you linked up with the rail line that in Colorado that would go east-west and could get you up to Denver, I guess, or even back down to Santa Fe or Albuquerque.
It did, yeah. That
it was
was
a very
that was the
roundabout
long
way.
route,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was, yeah. We were much more connected with Colorado than we were probably the rest of New Mexico at that time,
Right.
just because of that.
Exactly. And you mentioned about some of the shipments, of course, because we were growing a lot of fruits at that
We
era
were
with
growing
Farmington.
a tremendous amount of fruit at that time. It's amazing to me when I go back into the archives and look at that. We have documents that show one orchard that was right down near KFC on Main,
Okay.
right off of downtown there.
Main and Butler.
Main and Butler produced over 600,000 pounds of apples.
Oh my goodness! In one season.
In one season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they were shipping a tremendous amount of fruit out of here. In fact, we've also documented they were shipping about 2 train car loads every day out of here
Wow.
during the fruit
Okay.
season, produce
Amazing.
season. Yeah.
And so again, it would go to Durango, and so to get it to market, right? Because I guess the major market would be Denver.
Right.
That would still take maybe
Denver north.
a day to
Oh, yeah.
maybe make that
Oh,
trip
at
by
least,
rail.
Yeah, yeah, if not more.
And to try to get it south, not by train, would take much longer.
It would take longer than that, yeah, because you had to go up and around.
Right. If
Yep.
you're doing it by rail, if you're doing
Right.
it over the ground, it would be horse and wagon.
Oh, yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why they were
There was
shipping
no
it out by
Route 44
rail.
or Highway
No.
550 or anything at that time.
It was a bumpy ride.
It was a dirt road,
Yep.
maybe, if you were lucky.
Yep.
In most places, to Albuquerque, to point south. So, interesting. So the train was here, and again, that was your way to
was
get
your
in and out, but you were
transportation
going
out, yeah.
you were going north.
Well, and you talked about the World War One soldiers. That's
Yeah.
probably how they got home. Is
At the train station.
Yeah, is the train station.
That's probably
So,
true.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect.
for
That's
the
true.
most part.
Very good. Speaking of fruit,
Speaking of fruit,
here's
there's some fruit
right there, right?
Yep.
Do we know who these happy people are in this picture?
The gentleman, I believe, is Wayne Walling, and this is fruit from the Walling orchards.
Okay.
The girl is Vida Voorhees.
Okay.
But
And
these are peaches that they grew in their orchard.
Here in
They're-
Farmington.
yep,
And that
that
orchard
they're
was
harvesting.
located, do you know where?
You
in
know,
town?
I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I think it was down near where the aquatic center is.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where it is, and so somebody's probably going to call me and tell me.
Okay, well then you'll know, right?
Yeah.
I would call that
it'll,
maybe Central Farmington, maybe
Yeah.
on Sullivan Avenue there between Main and 20th.
right.
So I can be
we
vague.
have
I can be vague. And
We have a picture in our archives of a barn and their farm, and it's looking north, and I've always wanted to kind of get it positioned in one of those then and now things
Yes.
to
Right.
take another photograph. But I haven't really figured out exactly where it's
hard
at,
to do.
so.
Well, and you've done some of those from
We've
some
done
other
some of
photos,
those,
which
yeah.
but it's really hard to try to, because you're looking maybe at the horizon and really trying to line up the bluffs
You
or
try
the
and line up the
other
bluffs and the
stuff.
landscape and figure that out. And I've got some surprising ones
You
done
do.
now. So
You do, and I didn't bring it. I didn't put any of those in the show today, but
That's okay.
But that's okay. We'll have you
That's
back
okay.
for a different show. But it's fascinating. The
But
one
yeah, I mean, we were well known for peaches here for many years, and even like last year, the little peach orchard down by the Harvest Grove barn, it broke branches because there were so many peaches on there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Amazing.
a tremendous.
Well,
harvest.
and that's amazing to me to talk about farming here, because we do have a fairly extreme climate.
We do.
You know,
we do.
and so for people to come here and then, as you said, dig those irrigation ditches,
Right.
Because that was backbreaking work to get that done, and then plow the fields and
Right.
get the trees planted,
Right.
and then that doesn't happen immediately to get a peach tree or an
it
apple
doesn't.
tree.
In fact, they talk about having a crop from a fruit tree 8 to 12 years after you planted it, and
Right.
that's a long time.
That's investment.
That's a huge investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then figuring out the growing season and when to irrigate and when to do
Right.
all those farming things that I have no clue
And the
about.
freezes, we were always
Yeah.
susceptible to that. In fact, in some of these documents that I had posted, it had a frost clear into June,
Yeah.
which was, yeah.
Ouch. That's not going to help the crops at all. And even I know that.
Nope.
But yeah, so interesting with all the other stuff that was going on. But that was the life,
Well,
not just during pandemic, but at that time.
Well, yeah, and to be quite honest, clear up into 40s and 50s, it was still many, many orchards here.
That's right.
That's what the business was.
Until the
Yep.
oil and gas
boom. Yep.
Right. And then things changed a lot.
A lot.
Very quickly. That's true. And that's another show, too.
Yep.
Here we are inside a building that still stands downtown Farmington, the Hunter
Mercantile.
Mercantile,
Yeah.
right?
And it's
The
very
dusty attic today, we should say, for folks who don't know what we're talking
the
about.
dusty attic today. But I included this just to give people kind of a sense of what was available, what how businesses
Right.
worked back
Well,
then.
as I mentioned, there was no Amazon, but this is where you would go if you needed
This is
something.
where you would go
and you
to-
could see they had lots of different
lot of
things.
stuff
They were the
stocked.
Walmart of their day, I would suppose.
They were, yeah, they were probably it.
2 levels of retail,
Mm-hmm.
right, in that store, like the Dusty Attic has today. But you can
Right.
kind of see some of the, I'm going to call it
And
a
this-
saddle, which is the wrong term, on the
Harness.
hanging harness. Thank
Yeah.
you, hanging from the balcony there. But another maybe some canned goods and other things that are on the shelves,
Right.
and you can see
Dry goods.
Right.
Yep.
and maybe doing some trade. There's a Native American
Yep.
woman in the
Woman
picture.
and child there. Yep.
Yep.
They did a lot of trade and commerce off of the reservation because
Yeah,
where are you going to go over
there.
there?
Right.
You'd go to a trading post probably at that time. But yeah, they would also come into Farmington to shop.
which of course to me is fascinating that even 100 years ago, Farmington was still somewhat of a retail hub
Right.
for some of these areas.
Right.
And again, we mentioned that Aztec was bigger
Right.
as a city, but if you're coming in from the west, you'd hit Farmington
You'd
first,
hit Farmington, and that's where you did your business. Yeah,
Right.
we were kind of the end of the spur, so to speak, on the rail line. So, yeah, that's kind of what happened. People,
Right. And some of those other settlements then, even Shiprock, did not have as much retail variety then as maybe Farmington did in those days?
No, because you would have to ship it by buckboard or wagon from here to Shiprock.
Gotcha.
And so there wasn't a whole lot of incentive to do that unless you had a trading post or something like that.
Right.
So,
interesting. And the other smaller communities to our west, Bart Wilsey, like Kirtland and Fruitland and Waterflow, I mean, those weren't even as developed as Farmington was in those days, were they?
No. Oh, no.
Even smaller?
Even smaller.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yes.
My guest this morning, Bart,
Farmington was, again, the big town.
well, and Aztec.
And
right?
Aztec, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to give anything.
Oh, yes.
Take anything from Aztec, but yeah. But they were the place.
Sure.
Bart Wilsey is my guest. He's from the Farmington Museum. We were talking about Farmington and San Juan County during the last pandemic in the year around 1918, 1919. And so radio listeners, I know you're at a disadvantage because we're showing a lot of these wonderful pictures. And so I would encourage you to go watch the video online on our Facebook page and YouTube channel because they're just fascinating. And there's so much detail in these pictures, which I guess is what got them into the archives.
It is.
Because you look for things when you add them to a museum collection that really tell, hopefully, the entire story or fill in a lot of the blanks about the story, don't they?
Absolutely. And this picture is a great example of that. And it's highly convenient when they hang a calendar on the wall.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes.
That says March 1918. You can date the photograph.
There we go.
By blowing it up and looking at that calendar. But yes, this is very.
From what the people are wearing to what, again, we can see in the picture and the different products and all those things, right? You can really do a lot of
You can really
work.
Understand kind of what the environment was and the way people lived at that time.
Exactly.
Yep.
Very, very true. Very true. This next picture, Bart Wilsey, I want to ask you a bit about. This is the power plant, right?
This is the first power plant that was here in Farmington. This ran off of the right-legged ditch. It's fairly close for people that remember it where the old Atomic Sign shop was.
So it's a little bit maybe just east of the intersection of Main and Butler.
Main and Butler,
on the south side of Main Street.
I believe there's like a Rise Gymnastics place there now.
Okay.
So
right.
Shout out to them, I guess.
Very cool. And so now in 1918, was it uncommon for places to have electricity? I mean, were we one of the first?
Well, it was kind of uncommon, and it was really uncommon because Farmington got electricity in like 1902.
That's very early,
That's
it sounds to me.
Really early.
Right. Okay.
So, we'd been running this for, not quite 20 years.
Interesting.
So.
Now, it doesn't mean everybody got electricity, but it means maybe downtown got electricity.
No. Downtown was Farmington. But, and they wouldn't even have it on all day long. They would have it on maybe a couple hours in the evening, so you had lights or could do ironing or, stuff like that.
Right. And then lights out.
Lights out. Right. In fact, they would even turn the power off, on again, off again, to flicker the lights and tell people finish up what you're doing because lights are going out.
Interesting.
And this generated a whopping 100 horsepower.
Oh, well, there you go.
For people that understand horsepower.
Right. So not a lot.
Not a lot.
You couldn't run a lot with that.
No.
But it was a start.
But it was a start.
And again, in those days, that's what communities were offering. And that was kind of a bit of one-upsmanship, if you would, right? That if my town has electricity and then yours doesn't, you should move to my town.
Absolutely, and they use that as advertising to recruit people to Farmington.
Right.
But it was funny. People were also scared of it.
Well,
because it was new and different, and they didn't understand what it was. And
those holes in the wall, and the vapors would come out of it.
Right.
People were worried about those electric vapors.
They talk about the story of when they were putting in the power poles. One lady went out and jumped into the hole and wouldn't let them put the post in.
There you go, in front of her house.
Yeah, and they waited her out, I guess.
Interesting. Right. Now, this is a picture of the front of that power plant, right?
Right.
So this is what we would see from the street side, I guess.
Correct. From the main street side. Yep.
Right. So, but you had some other buildings there, too. So in addition to the power generating plant, you had something else
Well,
there.
they had the power plants on the left-hand side, and then there's an ice plant and a flour mill.
Okay.
Flour mill's on the right-hand side of that.
Interesting.
And
again,
they did it. They did it all. I mean, if you wanted flour, that's where you went, or you had wheat, that's where you took it to get ground.
And were these all owned by the municipality or just the power plant? Or there's a story there, I know.
Yeah, there's a story there. I'm a little unclear on that at this time.
Okay.
I think it was still, Basin Power and Light. I believe
Gotcha.
owned all of that.
Okay.
But I could
Right.
prove me wrong.
And again, for some of our younger viewers and listeners, people might wonder, what do you need an ice plant for?
Right.
You didn't have a refrigerator in your kitchen. You might have had an ice box.
Right.
And that would
Right.
require deliveries of ice. And how do you do that when it's 90 degrees outside, right?
Yep. And so they would pack ice away in this facility for summer's use. And
During the winter, though, they would gather it up in the winter.
They would cut it off of the river and any place else that they got thick ice on, and pack it away in there and keep it cold. It was well insulated, so it would keep pretty much all summer long. So.
Right. Best place to work probably in the
You'd
summertime.
get deliveries, or that's where you had to go to get your big chunks of ice and put them in your ice box.
And they were literally they were blocks of ice,
big blocks.
That would last,
yeah.
I don't know how long they would last, but
Probably a week.
that's what you would
maybe.
do, yeah. But fascinating to me.
I know.
History nerd too.
Well, it's
as someone
funny
that's already noted
to
on
think
our,
about how much time that would take. You know,
Right.
you would go out and cut the ice, and you would haul it in, and you would pack it away, and then you would unpack it and either deliver it or sell it.
Yeah,
I mean,
every week.
wow.
Every
Yeah,
week you're saying
every
maybe.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what people did.
That's what people did to
And-
survive.
And they thought it was the coolest thing, literally and figuratively, to be able to have
To have
cold storage
a cold drink
in your
the
house.
summer?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And to be able to preserve your meat or your whatever.
Your dairy.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
part of it. So interesting.
Wow.
Very, very cool. Well, very good. And we're just about out of time this morning, Bart. I'm just making sure I have another picture here. But we do have a couple more pictures of some ditches, which we've talked about, right? How important they were to the whole economy
To the early,
of this farming town.
Yeah, early agriculture. That's the way they got water, and a lot of way people get water today. But this is one of the head gates on coming off of the river. I believe this is the right-legged ditch again.
Okay. And again, you mentioned that a lot of these ditches that we have, or at least the oldest ones, probably date back to the very earliest times when this
1880s
area was opened up for settlement,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they dug them very early on, and they understood that there was a lot of usable land here, but to be able to get water to them, they had to dig these ditches to make that work.
Get it going.
Yep.
And again, that's hard work to dig a ditch.
Well, with a team and a big, what they call a slip shovel.
Right?
That's
what you had.
Extremely hard.
Right. No bulldozers
No
in
bulldozers.
1878.
When you hit a rock,
Yeah.
you got to dig it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Another ditch pictured here, too.
This is another ditch picture, and this is just east of where that power plant was. So.
Okay, so maybe the rise is of the Main Street area, and it kind of drops down towards the river there.
Towards San Juan Boulevard. Yep.
Right, so we're kind of looking south and west.
Kind of southwest, yep.
Okay.
As I understand it, and you can see on this picture, it's just barely kind of being held together there. But that lower area was really swampy down there where San Juan Boulevard is. And, this ditch leaked for forever. And
Well, yeah. That's what happens.
Yep.
But there you go.
But this generated enough power to run that power plant for many, many years.
That current in that ditch.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, 100 horsepower.
Yes. Well.
That's all you needed.
It's what you had.
At the moment. That's true. That's true. And so, again, to wrap up our conversation this morning, I guess once this pandemic kind of went away or calmed down, people were able to kind of get back to normal.
Right.
I mean, there was life after the pandemic. That's why we're here.
Absolutely.
And so when we think about current conditions, we know things are going to improve. Because they did.
Yeah, it's going to get better. There's hope out there. There's history to look back
Right.
to and understand that, this too shall pass. So just hang in there. Isolate, take care of yourself, wash your hands.
All those things.
Do all those things you need to do to take care of yourself.
Right. But again, we've been here before, and our community
And here we are.
showed that we're built of tough stuff and
yeah,
grew from there.
And they pulled together back then, and I'm seeing where you're pulling together now, and we'll get through this.
Very true, very true. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the two exhibits that we've talked about here before.
Right.
We were all excited they were about to open, and then guess what? They didn't.
They opened for a very short time.
Maybe, hours. But you have two exhibits at the museum.
We do.
And I know you and me and everybody is waiting for maybe some of these state directives to change a little bit.
Ease.
And you have some plans in place, hopefully, so when they do, we can come, hopefully, and see these exhibits, right?
We do. The first exhibit is called Gridiron Glory, the best of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It is just a tremendous exhibit. So many names from that exhibit are the who's who of football.
Right. And I would say whatever NFL team is your favorite, you will see something from them represented in this exhibit.
Something in there from this exhibit. Yeah.
Very good. And
Definitely.
the other one is...
the other one is titled Inside Out. It's about women's fashion, so we looked for something that kind of would balance the
football
okay.
All right.
aspect of things. But it's about both fashion and underwear that kind of influence some of that fashion over time. So,
okay.
Yeah.
There you go. And so I guess the word for the audience is to stay tuned.
Stay
because
tuned
I know
on
you're working
those.
with the governor's office and the city to see about, hopefully, fingers crossed, reopening at some point over the summer.
And we're going to have increased cleaning, sanitizing, social distancing still able to be done there in the exhibit. We're really looking forward to when we can open our doors and be able to show those exhibits.
So are we. We'll have you back to celebrate that. So
absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, Bart, thanks for coming in. Thank you for all the information about Farmington 100 years ago or so.
Sure.
Again, just a fascinating period of our history. And as you mentioned, just, regular life was so different.
It was different. It was a different time, a different pace.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're kind of getting back to a little bit of that maybe these days.
Well,
when we're talking with our families and sitting around the dinner table a little bit more than we have been.
I've spent more time with my family than I have for years.
Well, I hope that's a good thing.
But it's a good thing to be able to make those memories and be able to look back on this as, yes, it may have been a negative, but it was also a positive.
I think that's a great point and a great way to end the program today. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Stay well.
Good to see you.
Bart Wilsey, my guest from the Farmington Museum, right here with me on KSJE. Back with more in just a moment, everyone. The time is 8:48. KSJE is supported by the University of Denver Graduate School of Social Work Four Corners program. They're proud to offer a Master's of Social Work degree in the Four Corners community. Applications for the 2020-2022 cohort is now open. Classes are taught Fridays and Saturdays in Durango, Colorado. Find out more at 970-247-9773 or at du.edu/social